when my mother called to invite me to what she described as a small get-together. Just us. I pictured the four of us around the kitchen table. My parents, my younger brother, and me. Maybe takeout containers and bad reality TV. That was the kind of family dinner we actually had. So when I pulled up to my parents' house on a Saturday afternoon and saw cars lining both sides of the street for half a block, I sat in my car for a full minute just staring. There were balloons tied to the mailbox, silver and white, the kind you buy in bulk. I counted 14 cars before I stopped counting. My name is Claire, and I am 31 years old. I work as a contract attorney at a mid-size firm in Denver, which means I spend my days reading documents other people signed without fully understanding. I have spent years learning to notice the details that other people gloss over. I notice when language is vague on purpose. I notice when someone says we when they mean I. I notice when a story doesn't quite hold together at the seams. I should have noticed sooner. That part is on me. Let me back up about 8 months. Because that's where this really starts. My father had a health scare in the spring. Nothing ultimately life-threatening, but serious enough that he needed surgery and a longer-than-expected recovery. My parents live in Colorado Springs, about an hour south of me. My mother does not drive on the highway. My brother lives in Portland and had just started a new job he couldn't leave. So for about 6 weeks, I was the one going back and forth, covering groceries, driving my father to follow-up appointments, making sure the bills got paid on time. My parents have always been a little chaotic with money. Not malicious, just disorganized. My mother forgets to check the account balance before making purchases. My father has a habit of agreeing to expenses without telling her. They're not bad people, they love me, but they have never been the kind of parents who modeled financial discipline, and I grew up watching them stress about overdraft fees and late notices. During those 6 weeks, it became clear that managing their finances remotely was not working. I suggested adding myself to their joint checking account so I could monitor it and make sure the bills were covered while my father recovered. My mother cried with relief. My father gripped my hand and said I was the most responsible person he had ever known. I am, and I also made a mistake. After my father recovered, I should have immediately removed my own access and had them establish their own system. Instead, I kept meaning to have the conversation and they kept changing the subject, and weeks turned into months. I still checked the account occasionally, out of habit more than anything. I noticed it was lower than it should have been a few times, but my mother always had an explanation. A car repair. A medical copay they forgot to mention. I accepted it each time. What I did not do was remove myself from their account, and more importantly, what I did not do was notice that somewhere along the way they had also gotten themselves added to mine. I genuinely do not know exactly when it happened. My best guess is sometime during those 6 weeks when I was running back and forth and exhausted and trusted them completely. There is a joint account I opened years ago for a business venture that never materialized. I had forgotten it was still active. It still had direct deposits set up from a secondary income source I use for freelance contract work. Over the course of about 4 months, that account had been slowly drained. I did not notice because I was not watching it. I was watching my main account. I am a contract attorney who reads other people's paperwork for a living, and I was not watching my own. I want to be very clear about that. I am not telling this story to make myself sound like a victim who had no responsibility. I had responsibility, I made mistakes. But what happened next is still what happened next. I climbed out of my car and walked toward my parents' front door. Past the balloons, past a minivan I didn't recognize, past 2 older women I had never seen before, standing on the porch holding glasses of white wine. One of them smiled at me and said, "You must be so proud of her." I smiled back and said, "Sorry?" She gestured vaguely toward the house. "Your sister." Such wonderful news. I don't have a sister. I have a brother in Portland named Daniel who was most certainly not inside that house. I pushed open the front door. There were at least 60 people in my parents' home. Possibly more. The living room furniture had been pushed against the walls. There were round tables with white tablecloths set up throughout, with floral centerpieces, real flowers, not grocery store carnations. A catering setup was visible through the archway to the dining room. A banner hung across the entire length of the back wall in silver script lettering. It read, "Congratulations, Rachel and Tom. Baby on the way. Rachel is my cousin." I have not spoken to Rachel in 4 years, following an incident at my grandmother's funeral that I will not get into here, except to say that it was not minor and it was not forgotten. My mother knows this. My entire family knows this. Tom is Rachel's husband. I have never had a strong opinion about Tom specifically, but by association, Tom and I are also not close. My mother materialized from the crowd in a floral dress I had never seen before, holding a champagne flute, her face lit up with the particular brightness she gets when she is in hostess mode. "Claire, you made it." She kissed my cheek. "Doesn't everything look beautiful?" I looked at the banner. I looked at the flowers. I looked at the catering trays visible from where I stood. I looked at my mother's dress, which I would later find out cost $240. "Mom," I said, very quietly, "what is this?" "A baby shower. For Rachel. Isn't it wonderful? We've all been through so much these past years, and this is just such happy news. I wanted to do something special. You didn't tell me Rachel was pregnant." She waved her hand. "I knew you two had your little disagreement, but family is family, Claire. I thought if you came, you'd see that it was time to let things go." I want to tell you that I said something sharp and decisive in that moment. I didn't. I said, "Okay," in a voice that didn't sound like mine, and I moved to the edge of the room near the window and I stood there and I looked at the flowers. The centerpieces were garden roses, peonies, eucalyptus. The kind of arrangement that runs $60 to $80 at minimum per table. I counted 9 tables. The catering appeared to be from a local company I recognized. Their brunch packages start at $40 per person. I estimated 60 guests. The banner was custom. That lettering is not from a party store. My mother's dress was $240. I found out later. I stood at the window and I started doing the math in my head, not because I enjoy it, because something had started moving in the back of my mind, something quiet and cold, and I could not make it stop. My phone buzzed. A banking app notification, one I had largely stopped watching. An alert I had set up and forgotten about, triggered when a transaction exceeded $200. I looked at the notification. It showed a transaction from 2 days prior, $357.57. Floral Design Studio, Colorado Springs. From the account I had forgotten I was sharing, I did not react visibly. I am a lawyer. I have sat across from people who were lying directly to my face and nodded calmly while mentally building a case. I am very good at controlling my expression when something important is happening. I opened the banking app and I scrolled back through the past 3 months. Catering deposit, $1,200. Event rental, tables and linens, $650. Floral Design Studio, $387. Custom Occasions Printing, 2015. My mother's dress, $240. Invitations and postage, $130. Invitations and postage, $130. A hotel reservation at the Marriott downtown. I could not immediately figure out who that was for, but it was $430 for 2 nights. Miscellaneous, another $600 or so spread across party supply stores, grocery runs labeled with notes like shower snacks, a cake order from a bakery I recognized. The total, when I quietly added it up while standing at my own cousin's baby shower, in my own parents' house, surrounded by people I mostly did not know, was just over $4,000. $4,000. From an account I had forgotten they had access to. For a party celebrating a person I had explicitly, clearly, and for legitimate reasons, distanced myself from. My mother came back to check on me. She put her hand on my arm and squeezed. "Come say hi to Rachel," she said. "She'd love to see you." "Mom," I said, keeping my voice completely steady, "did you use money from my account for this?" She blinked. Not the blink of someone who didn't understand the question. The blink of someone who had prepared for the question and was now deciding which version of the answer to use. "Claire, we're family. We've always shared. Did you use money from my account for this event?" She lifted her chin slightly. "You have so much, Claire. You've worked so hard and you have so much, and this family needed something to celebrate. We all needed it. Rachel is family. This baby is family." sometimes you have to think beyond just yourself. I looked at her for a long moment. I thought about my father gripping my hand during his recovery and calling me the most responsible person he had ever known. I thought about 6 weeks of highway drives and appointment reminders and covered bills. I thought about $4,000 going to garden roses and catering and a hotel for someone I didn't invite. I said, "Okay, Mom, I hear you." Then I excused myself to use the restroom, and instead I walked out the front door, sat in my car, and called my bank. Here's the thing about being a contract attorney. I know exactly which words to use. I explained the situation to the fraud department clearly and without emotion. Unauthorized access. Transactions I did not approve. I had the dates, the amounts, and the merchant names pulled up on my phone while I spoke. The representative was sympathetic and efficient. She walked me through the dispute process and confirmed that the account would be flagged and reviewed. Then I called a locksmith. Not literally, but the financial equivalent. I transferred every remaining dollar out of that account into a new one I opened on my phone in under 10 minutes. I set up a new direct deposit routing. I removed every authorized user I could remove immediately and filed the paperwork to revoke the rest. By the time I walked back into that house, smiled at my mother, ate a small plate of the catered food that had been purchased with my money, and said polite goodbyes to strangers, the account was effectively empty and under dispute review. I drove home. I did not cry. I made a list. Over the next week, I documented everything. I am very good at documentation. I pulled 3 months of transaction records, organized them by date and merchant, and calculated the full total with notes. I drafted a formal letter, not a text, not an email, a letter, outlining the unauthorized use of my account, the specific transactions in question, and my intention to pursue full repayment. I had a colleague at my firm review it. She raised an eyebrow and said, "Is this for a client?" I said no. She said, "Good letter." I also did something that took me longer to decide about. I called my father. My father and I have always been closer than my mother and I. He is gentler, more likely to admit when he's done something wrong. I called him and I told him what I had found, calmly, without accusations, and I asked him directly if he had known. There was a long silence. Then he said, "Your mother said you had mentioned the money was there and she could use it if needed." I said, "I never said that." Another long silence. He said, "I know." That was the hardest moment in the whole thing. Not the party, not the transactions. That moment on the phone with my father when he said, "I know," and we both understood what we were acknowledging. My mother's response when I sent the letter was not an apology. It was a 3-paragraph message about how hurtful it was that I was making this into a legal situation, how she had only wanted to do something meaningful for the family, how Rachel's pregnancy was a rare bright spot, and didn't I understand that she just wanted everyone to be happy. Not one word about the $4,000. Not one sentence acknowledging that it wasn't hers to spend. I replied with 2 sentences. I acknowledged her message and restated the repayment amount and timeline I had outlined in my letter. My brother called from Portland when he heard. He has always been the mediator in our family, the one who smooths things over and encourages everyone to see each other's point of view. He called to tell me, gently, that maybe I should consider that Mom's intentions were good. I said, "Daniel, I know her intentions. I'm asking about her actions." He was quiet for a moment and then he said, "Yeah. Okay. That's fair." He called me back 3 days later and told me he had spoken to our parents and that our father agreed the money needed to be returned. He didn't make it dramatic. He just said, "Dad knows. He's going to make it right." It took about 6 weeks, but the full amount was repaid, not all at once, but in installments that my father arranged without my mother's apparent enthusiasm. Each transfer came with a note from my father. Not an explanation, just the amount, and the date, and, on the final one, 2 words. "I'm sorry." My mother and I did not speak for almost 2 months. When we finally did, at my brother's insistence over a video call, she did not apologize in any way I would recognize as an apology. She said she hoped I had moved past everything and that she missed me. I told her I was still processing. I told her that trust, once it's broken in that specific way, does not just reset because time passes. She said, "I never thought of it as breaking trust." I said, "I know, Mom. That's part of the problem. I want to be honest about where things stand now because I think the honest version is more useful than the clean version. I still have a relationship with my parents. My father and I speak regularly. Things between us are quieter than they were before, but they're real. He has never tried to minimize what happened or asked me to drop it. I respect him for that. My mother and I are in a different place. We talk. Holidays happen. But I have accepted something I resisted for a long time. Her version of love and my version of love are genuinely different things, and the gap between them is not something I can close by being patient or understanding enough. I can love her and also maintain a clear-eyed understanding of who she is. Those two things can both be true. The account she had access to is closed. Every financial account I have now has a single authorized user, me. I do not share login credentials with anyone. If a family member needs financial support, I give it as a deliberate, documented gift, a check, a transfer with a note, not as open access. I used to feel guilty about that. The boundaries felt cold. They felt like a statement about how much I trusted my family, and I didn't want to make that statement. I've stopped feeling guilty. A boundary is not a statement about love. It's a structure that makes love sustainable. Without it, love becomes something that can be quietly drained while you're not looking. $4,000 at a time to pay for flowers at a party you weren't invited to. Rachel had her baby. A girl, apparently. I saw the announcement on social media. I wish the child nothing but good things. I did not send a gift. If you're listening to this and you have a family member on any of your accounts for any reason, an emergency, a convenience, just in case, I want you to hear this clearly. Check it today, not tomorrow. Today. Set up transaction alerts if you don't have them. Know what's moving through your accounts and who has the ability to move it. It is not suspicious to protect yourself. It is not unloving to maintain financial boundaries with the people you love. The most responsible thing I have ever done for my family relationships is make sure that my financial security cannot be used as a resource by anyone other than me. My father called me the most responsible person he had ever known. I'm working on making that fully true.